In 2017, Labour almost won a general election basically without the help of Scotland. If you compare that result to the Blair years when Labour used to clean up in Scotland, you can see just how difficult it is now for Labour to win a majority. Whatever your personal opinion on Corbyn is, he was able, at least for a short period, to hold most of Labour's so-called broad church together, as well as radical left millennials who are often wary of party politics, as this interesting article explains. And he did this during a moment in which a growing cultural rift in Britain found its voice in the Brexit referendum. I'd like to see you try that, or even this guy, and especially this guy. The frankness and often bad-temperedness that was characteristic of Corbyn's 2015 to 2017 media appearances were widely mocked by the media and were off-putting to a lot of centre-left voters who, despite being deeply politically engaged and used to seeing their opinions echoed in the mainstream TV media, are ultimately a small minority of voters. To many others, Corbyn's style of interview was inspiring, whether it be radical progressives on the left, or furious Brexit voters, also on the left and on the right, who were sick of Westminster politics as usual. And by keeping the conversation squarely on class politics, and crucially by vowing to honour the Brexit result, Corbyn was able to avoid the pitfalls of identity politics that has increasingly divided the UK electorate. So by 2017, Corbyn was able to halt and in some cases reverse the declining Labour vote in ex-industrial communities, or the so-called Labour heartlands, that has been taking place since Blair's very first election, while at the same time Corbyn won huge support in the cities with the most culturally progressive manifesto the party has ever produced.
Voters who backed his sincerity rallied to the anti-austerity cause. UKIPers who Theresa May had hoped would go to her Remain constituencies, which swung from blue to red.
You see how careful that balance is. You've got people who on the one hand are considering voting for the Brexit Party, or maybe even befriending Tommy Robinson on Facebook, voting for the same person as Stormzy. Now, I'm not saying that Corbyn was massively appealing to all of these people. It was simply that his radical economic policies and critique of globalisation and to some extent the EU, coupled with his highly principled pro-immigration stance and focus on changing Britain's international relations, made him palatable to large swathes of the population who normally don't really see eye to eye on much.
It has been another bruising day for the Prime Minister. Faith in her, in the government, in the political system, here at least, in a grave state.
However, very quickly after the 2017 election, Corbyn began losing support from both camps, and for conflicting reasons. Tory party propaganda began heavily pushing Corbyn's internationalism, framing him as the poster boy of the often misunderstood progressive politics associated with university campuses and Westminster elitism, or in short, Remainerism. And this perception, coupled with Labour's increasingly fudgy Remain-abetting Brexit position, started to make Corbyn look less and less like an insurgent figure come to shake up the Westminster system, and more like an out-of-touch, hot-air-filled Lib Demi technocrat, a kind of Keir Starmer figure. Meanwhile, Corbyn was also losing voters on the other side of the divide, for almost the exact opposite reasons. As the conversation around Brexit polarised, with no deal being pushed as the only true Brexit, and Remainers suddenly believing that a second referendum was possible if not inevitable, Corbyn's position of respecting the referendum result with a Labour deal began to look less and less like a sensible, making the best of a bad situation idea, and more like the main obstacle to the Remainers' second vote dream. Corbyn, once the great hope of Remainers' desire for compromise, was recast as its chief antagonist. This new perception of Corbyn as on the wrong side of the Brexit debate was compounded by the anti-Semitism allegations, which found a second wind with soft left broadsheet readers, as the insinuations of the crisis played nicely with their suspicions of a dark anti-progressive agenda inside the Corbyn movement. And so, for contradictory reasons, Corbyn became steadily more and more unpopular with both Leavers and Remainers. Labour lost the election, Britain lost its chance for a soft, sensible Brexit deal, or a radical but ultimately crucial climate crisis programme, or a government with a mandate to end austerity and rebalance the nation's wealth.